Got 3 thumbs up in the chat already too. Appreciate that. Appreciate the love. Throw some love this way when you come in. Hit that thumbs up button and try to share it if you can. Let me make sure I get confirmation that I'm live, loud, and clear before I get going. Bam. All right. In like Flynn, what's up, everybody? Okay. Yeah, man. So that R word, right? A lot of these R words going on in the higher places of hella weird, isn't it? So we've got Danny Masterson is the big news, right? So for any of you guys out there that have been like under a rock for the last week and you're not up to speed on the whole Danny Masterson thing. So Danny Masterson was the guy from Aloha Nelson Torres. Danny Masterson was the guy from, that 70s show, right? He was the dude with like the long curly hair and always wore the gradient shaded sunglasses. And
hippie like dude.
Yeah, well, yeah, so like the hippie dude. Okay, so this guy has been accused, well, actually, he's been more than accused. He was sentenced to basically 30 years. So there was 3 cases of the R word that went before a judge. And this was actually the second time that it went to trial, right? So the first time that it went to trial was like less than a year ago, and there was a hung jury. And so it was a mistrial. And so they had to try it again recently, and he was sentenced to, so one of the counts, he was, I guess, acquitted, and then 2 of the counts he was found guilty and got 15 years for each of those counts. What's up, Shaolin? And those 2 15-year counts are run consecutively as opposed to concurrently, and so that's 30 years to life, right? And when they sentence you like that, where it's 30 years to life, that's you're gonna do at least 30 years, right? It's unless I'm totally mistaken on this, like even good behavior and gain time and stuff doesn't apply towards that. If it's like a 25 to life or a 30 to life sentence, you're gonna do the 30 minimum before you're eligible for parole. So I could be wrong. And of course, now he can still appeal, right? But the internet and the media seems to definitely think he did it. I haven't seen the trial. I honestly couldn't tell you what any of the victims look like or their names. I mean, their names are public, but they were like Jane Doe 1, 2, and 3 for the longest time. And Danny Masterson, he's a big time Scientologist too, right? And we know how weird Scientology is, right? And so, I tend to believe the victims for sure in this case. I mean, it looks really bad for Danny Masterson for sure. But I think one of the reasons why it looks so bad is because all of the witnesses have similarities in their stories, right? And so hypothetically, just me sort of playing devil's advocate here, it is possible for a group of people to get together and target somebody that they don't like. That sort of thing is possible to happen, right? And if you're rich and famous and into Scientology, which all 3 of the victims were also Scientologists, right? But what my point is, though, is it's not inconceivable for people to collude and, get together and tell a cohesive or similar story in order to seem that much more credible. I mean, and I'm definitely not defending Danny Masterson per se. Like, I tend to think that he is guilty, right? I mean, that's sort of my gut instinct. But it's not like he's really, as far as I know, he's not like maintaining his innocence. And even Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis got involved in these sort of like public. Well, so what happened was they wrote letters to the judge for leniency as like character witnesses on the sentencing part. So he had already been found guilty, and so they wrote letters to the judge, like, and their letters weren't of the spirit of, you know, there's no way he did this. You know, I've known this man for all these years, and it's not conceivable that he would do this. And so, by the way, what this is, so the allegations are that, so he basically drugged these women and then apparently seems like they did something to them when they woke up. The one of them, he paid a hefty out of court sort of settlement hush money amount. It was like 400 grand back in 2003 when that 70s show was still fresh, right? Drugged them by the hair? No, Rich Spillman, like, no, apparently they were drugged and then woke up sore, right? So, and now this is all 20 years ago, right? And so you would think statute of limitations on this sort of thing, because technically there would be statute of limitations. So what that means is after X number of years, you can't file criminal charges unless it's a crime that can be considered for life in prison. If it's a crime that can be considered for life in prison, then the statute of limitations is then null and void. And the way that they did it was because there was 3 cases at once. Well, that's your 3 strikes you're out rule, right? And so because there was 3 at once, that can get you life. And so they were able to dig up stuff from like 20 years ago and tried him with it all at once. So now again, this stuff went to trial before, and there was a hung jury before. So that means they couldn't come to a consensus, and it got kicked down the road to another jury, a mistrial. And this jury found him guilty on 2 and not guilty on 1, right? And so, you know, in retrospect, he is getting life in prison for these effectively, 15, and 30. Now, he can definitely appeal, right? And so that's definitely going to be what comes next. But it definitely doesn't look good for Danny Masterson, who is still in good standing with the Church of Scientology. Now, one thing that I do know is that this story wouldn't be as big as it is unless people in the media wanted it to be. Like, if they wanted this thing to be hush, it would be hush, right? And I think some of the damage control done by Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis, you know, co-stars on the 70s show, did more harm than it did good for this whole cause, especially for their cause, right? 'Cause like Ashton Kutcher has since like resigned from some of his stuff, right? But what I mean is, so when they wrote those letters basically saying what a great guy Danny Masterson is and that he's very much an anti-drug guy. So like he preaches to his friends not to do drugs, and therefore the insinuation is that's almost more callous for him to be, you know, drugging women, right? So it looks that looks really bad for Danny Masterson. And there's been other seemingly credible witnesses that have come forward and had similar sort of stories to tell about Danny Masterson. So I mean, it definitely looks like he did it. It definitely looks like he's guilty. But then again, you know, I don't know. I haven't seen any of the trial stuff. I'm not really up to speed on the minutia of it, only sort of the broad strokes of it. And it's, I probably won't spend too much time watching all the trial stuff, but I always, a lot of people tend to say that once you get convicted of something, then that automatically means that you definitely did it. And, legally, okay, fine, you don't have to use caveats like allegedly because it's been proven in a court of law. So in that respect, it's sort of true. But also there have been plenty of examples of people who were found guilty of things in a court of law that really actually didn't do what they were being accused of doing. So, just because there's a conviction of something doesn't necessarily make it true. You know what I mean? So there's that. And, we're seeing so much of this stuff. One that hit me really hard was Louis C.K., right? And that's old. And, the stuff that Louis C.K. was doing was a different level than the allegations against the likes of Danny Masterson and others like Chris D'Elia, who's another one I'm going to talk about here in a minute that kind of hit me hard as well. But so of course, Louis C.K. is doing more along the lines of like weird pervy things, right? And getting called out on it. But it wasn't necessarily like he physically victimized anyone. It was more along the lines of dude just was kind of weird, acting weird or whatever, right? Doing weird stuff in front of people and, whatever. I can't necessarily get on board with that, but it is a horse of a different color from, drugging somebody and raping. Did I say the R word? Them, right? And so here's another one that we're fixing to see that's fixing to drop. And I want to sort of get out ahead of this one, not like it's going to matter, but so apparently Russell Brand is fixing to get hit with a bunch of allegations tomorrow. I guess there's going to be simultaneous releases of I want to say a New York Times article and then another one where the only reason that we know who or what this is about is because Russell Brand has already come out with a denial of the stuff that's fitting to drop. And so, we don't have all of the details on it, but basically it looks like something is going to drop in terms of Russell Brand with what appear like they're going to be unconsensual, assault allegations or charges. So, yeah. Well, and so where I kind of want to go with this is, so Chris D'Elia was like in the LA comedy circuit, right? And I want to say he was some kind of a residency at one of the comedy stores or the comedy clubs, one of the big ones down there, and did hosting or whatever. And so he's been accused of some very, pretty hardcore stuff in this regard. And I don't know where that's at legally, but I do know that there are secret FTMs or MTFs, right? You got to think backwards. MTFs out there that could potentially be really making stuff up. So and let me give you an example of something that will prove to you that I know from personal experience that being arrested for something or maybe even being convicted of something doesn't necessarily prove anything. So years and years ago, my wife and I had an argument, and I spent the night. I went and got a hotel and stayed in a hotel and woke up at the hotel, went to work all day long, came home, went home from work, not to a hotel, but came home from work, and went to sleep because I was super tired. And when I woke up, my wife was bashing me with the big PS2, right? And I like get up out of sleep, like, what are you doing? And she threw it at me. She was mad, right? Threw it at me, and missed. But when she threw it, she sliced her hand wide open on the side of the thing. And this was like one of those the big PS2s. They weighed like probably not 50 pounds, but a good 20. Like they were heavy, right? And so when she sliced her hand wide open, for whatever reason, she ran downstairs, getting blood everywhere outside, and then knocked on the next door neighbor's door and got blood all over their door. And the next door neighbor called the police. The police come out, and I go in the car in handcuffs. Luckily, her daughter saw the whole thing that happened and was like, well, John was sleeping and he didn't do anything. And so Mina went to jail too at the same time, like same event. We both, and at the time, because we were in North Carolina, I don't know, I guess it's a state law that for domestic violence stuff, it's a 72-hour mandatory minimum hold for each person. So we had to each sit in county jail for 3 days. When we got out, the most craziest thing happened. What an interesting story. Like, I don't think I've ever told this story, but she's sitting right there. And I guess she's probably awake because I'm so loud, but she'll attest to this. The craziest thing, right? So when we got out and we like got booked next to each other, and we drank back then a lot, like both of us. She hasn't touched a drop in over a decade, right? And I'll occasionally have a beer, but we drank every day back then. And so by the time we were getting booked, she was like crying and apologetic and stuff. And so we made up pretty quick, right? But we still had to sit in jail for 3 days. And what did I do? I didn't do anything. I was asleep, but I still got charged with it. And actually, we played hell getting an attorney because the attorneys wouldn't represent each of us, saying it was a conflict of interest, right? Until we found one that would. Hasty, who's now a circuit judge in Fayetteville, right? But he's the one that did it. And luckily, we got it expunged too. So if you go through the process and pay extra to get something expunged, then it's no longer on your permanent record. But you have to be acquitted of it, or it has to be dismissed or dropped or whatever. But if you don't get it expunged, even though it was a nothing burger and nothing came of it, if we hadn't have gone that extra step to get it expunged, it would be a thing on a permanent record showing domestic violence, right? And so, I mean, that's just one example, right, of how things like that can happen. And so, again, just because someone gets arrested for something, Americans are so pussified when it comes to this sort of thing too. We're supposed to be the land of the free, right? But Americans will stand by and watch as you, a minor, are basically kidnapped by thugs wearing blue for nothing. And they won't do anything to stop them because we give all of that authority to the uniform and the badge. They can be totally wrong about what they're doing, but because they have that badge, people will stand by and allow shit to happen. And that goes for me and every single person watching. Like, we're all guilty of it. I think there probably was a time when people would, like, if they saw authorities going, overstepping their boundaries and doing something that is inherently wrong and illegal according to natural law, right, that they would have stopped them, but not anymore, right? Like, you can you can get stopped walking down the street and have the wrong type of salad in your pocket and still do time here in the United States for that. So, you know, there's no victim, there's no nothing. Tony Drake, normal up. Yeah. But so, you know, when it comes, so like, I don't know, man, when it comes to these high profile cases in Hollywood that are just really covered by the media, I'm always raising an eyebrow because frankly, you know, I don't trust the mainstream, lamestream media at all as far as I can throw them, right? And so when I see them unified pushing things out there, like especially against Russell Brand, and you know, Russell Brand, it's funny because I like Russell Brand. I think he's a funny guy. I've liked him for a while because I read one of his books while I was in jail kind of recently, and it really kind of touched me and moved me, and it was made a lot of sense. And before that, you know, I really wasn't a big fan of Russell Brand, honestly. But since that, you know, he seems like actually a decent person. And also, I've kind of got a sneaking suspicion that, you know, he may be a crypto closet flat earther, man. I don't know that for sure, but I suspect it based on some of the things that he said. And when that becomes too apparent, expect attacks. And the higher profile you are, the worse the attack is going to be, right? And so we can't always just necessarily believe everything that people allege because of, because of continuity of stories, right? So if you've got 5 people all telling the exact same story or similar stories, you know, a lot of time we automatically tend to think that that lends a lot of credibility to their narrative, right? But on the other hand, I mean, couldn't it mean that there's some, I mean, also it could mean that there's some form of collusion. By the way, another name I wanted to talk about on this sort of list of high profile celebrities, yeah, Nelson Torres, statute of limitations, right. And I already covered that. So the way that they got around that, because it was so long ago, was because for just one of these instances, there wasn't a potentiality for a 2-life sentence, right? But if there's 3, then it automatically hits the 3 strikes you're out rule potentially. And so that means that it is a potentiality for a 2-life sentence. And therefore, because they tried it as a trifecta, the statute of limitations was thus out the window, basically. That's the legality of it. So, yeah, well, and okay, so Lev Kung Fu Shaolin says Russell Brand has 33 tattooed on his wrist. Yeah, I mean, tattoos are definitely permanent. I don't have any. I don't have a single tattoo, right? Maybe I'll get one day if something speaks to me. But, you know, Russell Brand was definitely, I'm not going to apologize for his tattoos, right? But he was definitely leading a very fast and promiscuous lifestyle for years. And just because he got something tattooed really doesn't mean much to me. I mean, is he a Freemason? I don't know. I mean, that's usually the guys that do 33. But then, you know, also I think that there's other, I mean, some people are just into numerology, right? Which, you know, to each his own, right? I mean, whatever. Aaron Kevin says, I've been waiting on them to go after Russell. He's doing too much good, talking too much sense, and wait, I can look at it over here. Let me slide this thing over. Sorry if that was loud. Sorry. Doing too much good, talking too much sense, uniting instead of dividing. Yeah. So, but y'all know Bill Cosby is out walking around free, right? And so apparently the way that Cosby got out was his sentence was overturned because of basically a technicality. So what happened was a previous prosecuting attorney had offered him immunity for one particular case, right? So for whatever reason, cooperation or forthcoming of information that Cosby did for that prosecuting attorney, he was granted immunity for promised immunity in writing for one of those victims. And then the next prosecutor came along and ended up trying him for that anyway and got a conviction on it, even though he had it in writing that he had immunity for that. And so because of that, it was overturned. The whole thing got overturned. So Bill Cosby is out. He's been out. A lot of people don't know that. And, you know, of course, I think sexual assault, right? The R word is probably the worst possible thing you can accuse somebody of, right? I mean, it definitely is by far. And I think the worst part of it is the way that it is viewed in the prison system, right? Because, I mean, you can murder people, you can all day long kill people, and in prison, you know, they're not going to frown upon that all that much. But if it's like a child, or if there's SA, you know, R involved, then you have a very hard time in prison, because basically you don't have anything coming to you, right? Other than the things that you don't want coming to you, right? So those sorts of allegations are the worst thing that you can hurl on a person. I mean, not to mention, you know, society in general, of course, frowns on it, but, you know, they even frown on that sort of thing in prison. So it's the worst of the worst is a sexual predator, right? And, you know, when it comes to, and I'm just going to come out and say this as well, you know, when it comes to Danny Masterson, in my opinion, there's a chance dude's at FTM, right? So in that case, how much raping has he actually done, right? If it's an FTM, I don't know. I can't, I'm not going to cast that judgment, but what if that's the case? Wouldn't that be something? Because honestly, I have a hard time believing anything that the media pushes. I really do. Like, my nature is to sort of inherently take the opposite position of things that they push. And only in rare circumstances will I end up concluding, you know, after investigation that, oh, they were actually telling the truth this time, right? Because grassroots movements that threaten the status quo are vehemently fought against by the mainstream media outlets, right? And even the sort of virtual cloud-based media outlets too. And also, if there are scandals involving their people that they have, you know, allegiances with, then that sort of thing never sees the light of day, right? I mean, a good example that I always come back to is the whole fluoride in the water thing, right? I mean, they're literally poisoning our water with a developmental neurotoxin, and a whole lot of us know about it. A whole lot of us want them to stop, and we can't even get them to stop poisoning our water or making a big stink about it on the mainstream media outlets. It just isn't talked about. I mean, they'd rather talk about nonsense like, you know, which way do you unravel your toilet paper, from the front or from the back, right? That's a story, but, you know, our water being poisoned just doesn't seem to make the cut ever, because, you know, they have a narrative. So if there is actually some detrimental thing that people need to know about, these silly motherfuckers ain't going to be the ones to tell you. Hell no. I wouldn't count on them for diddly squat. And also, we know that they just make up shit in order to get ratings. And so basically, you know, Russell Brand has come out ahead of this thing vehemently denying this stuff in advance, that we don't know exactly what this stuff is, but based on the intuition of the thing, it seems like they're going to come out with some form of non-consensual sexual assault allegations, right? So we'll see about that. Which, if it's true, then I think justice needs to be served, right? Because that's, you can't go around doing that sort of thing. But on the other hand, if it was consensual and these are just gold diggers trying to get their hands on a piece of a high-profile target, that they could conceivably conspire against to sort of straighten out their stories and go at him like a class action sort of a lawsuit. It's a very difficult thing to cast decision on without information, but I think that we should all definitely pray for Russell Brand either way. Pray that if he is guilty, that he is found out, and pray that if he's innocent, that he's exonerated, right? Because I think that there is power in that. I truly do. So, what do y'all think, man? Let's get some thumbs up in the chat. 33 on his wrist. He's been a part of the club for a long time, says John Paul Jordan. Yeah. A pat of the club. No, I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so MTV, we all know that it's definitely Masonic TV. So I would be very surprised if Russell Brand was not at some point a Freemason, honestly. Now, does that necessarily mean he's evil? No, I don't think so. Does that necessarily mean he did some bizarre ritualistic shit with the fraternity? I think that's probably guaranteed if you're a Freemason. But if you get all the way to the 33rd degree, then that means you've sworn certain oaths to a brotherhood who basically, if you cross them or if you don't do exactly, like protect them at all costs, you're supposed to lie, cheat, and steal basically for your lodge. If you don't do that, then they'll basically kill you, or maybe they'll roast you in the media like we're seeing. So, is it possibly that Russell Brand is a high up Freemason and he's being punished by the lodge because he's going against the grain? I mean, surely seems like that to me, if that's the case. But again, I'm not gonna go and say that Russell Brand is or is not a Freemason. But usually when people tattoo 33 on their arm or whatever, as you guys are saying, and you're also high up in hella weird, or the British version of Hollywood or whatever. I'm not sure what that is. What is it? The Piccadilly Circus? I don't know. What do you call it? What is the UK version of Hollywood? I don't know. It's not Bollywood. Maybe it's Piccadilly Circus, I reckon. I don't know. But yeah, so definitely, I mean, to your point though, John Paul Jordan, yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes without saying he's part of the club. And so what does that entail exactly? I mean, are we talking eyes wide shut type parties and that sort of thing? I mean, probably. I'm sure that sort of thing probably goes on, right? Russell Brand's already come out and admitted that, he was a sex addict and he had a lot of unfulfilling consensual relationships, and that he was, very careful to take steps to make sure that it was consensual. But at the same time, when you're doing super hard drugs, I mean, there's a chance he did things he doesn't remember. And if that's the case, I wouldn't be surprised if there are instances where people get photographed unbeknownst to themselves while they're totally unconscious, right? I mean, I think that sort of thing probably could happen too. So, and now with AI, we also have all this deep fake possibilities too. So I am curious to see what this is going to be all about tomorrow, but definitely prayers go up for Russell Brand, man. Oh, so here's another interesting part of the Danny Masterson story. So I think it was back in 2003, but it was decades ago when they were still shooting that 70s show, right? Ashton Kutcher was going to one of those award ceremonies, like the Grammys or the Emmys or whatever it is. And he went to go pick up his date prior to the award show. And he goes up to the door and he knocks on the door, and it's allegedly it's locked. He can't get in, and the girl's not coming to the door. And he looks in the window and sees what he thinks is red wine on the floor, and then leaves and goes to the party. This is the story he's telling, right? Well, come to find out that girlfriend he was going to pick up had been murdered by a man who turned out to later be caught and convicted of her murder, who was a serial killer, right? As crazy as that sounds. And in fact, Ashton Kutcher testified in the trial of this serial killer. Okay. The allegations that are going on, and these, as far as I know, are just allegations, but they seem very credible to me, was that Ashton Kutcher actually knew the girl was dead, and instead of calling the police, what he did was he went out to his car and called like his people, like his agent or his manager, and he also called Danny Masterson to ask for advice on what to do. And allegedly, the story goes that he was instructed to just pretend like nothing happened. He was not going to be the one to report this murder. He wasn't going to have his feet held to the fire. So he just ignored it, pretended like nothing happened, and went on to the award show without his date because she was laying dead in the floor. And he knew it, but didn't call the police. Now, where I come from, that right there is called accessory after the fact, right? So technically, even though he is a successful rich guy and didn't do anything, the fact that he didn't immediately, if he knew that this woman was dead and he didn't call police, that's accessory after the fact, man. You're now not only that and or obstructing justice. So either way they want to go with it, you're involved in this. And the sad thing about this is that guy that murdered this woman and was convicted of it later went on to murder 2 other girls after this. And apparently they were not able to prosecute him for the murder that Ashton Kutcher was now a part of because of the fact that he lied. Ashton Kutcher lied to the police about this, and they knew it then. They knew he was lying then because, of course, he's a fucking idiot, and the police ain't stupid like that. You know, not murder detectives. You're not going to like pull one over on the murder detectives with a story about seeing red wine in the floor, right? That shit's never going to fly, especially if he like went around to the back of the house and saw her through the window, because you can't see where she was at from the front of the house. Either that or he actually got in and locked the door behind him. Either way, his fingerprints were there. He was all over the murder scene, and it casted a shadow of doubt on the case that they would have otherwise had against the actual murderer. That's what's sort of being said about that, which is why I believe Ashton Kutcher has resigned from the stuff that he's resigned from, because you can't just do that shit, man. I mean, I'm sorry, you know, your career's real important and stuff, Ashton Kutcher, but you can't just, you can't just let your freaking girlfriend continue to just be dead on the floor in order to sort of guard yourself or insulate yourself against career bumps, right? Dings on your career. I mean, it really goes to show you where these people's hearts and heads are at. I mean, sure, it's understandable, but at the same time, any normal person would have just called the police, like, oh my God, this woman is dead, right? But no, anybody else, I think, would have been charged with obstruction of justice. I think. I wonder if some, out of court money was slipped to those detectives, right? Very satanic of him, right? Yeah, I mean, I think they're all a bunch of snakes, man. Um, when you get to that sort of level in Hollywood, it's like you're either with the snakes or not. Sort of a funny story, but if y'all remember a child actor named Chris Dimitrov, he was in several like 80s movies. One of them was Sometimes They Come Back or something like that. Might have been part 2 of it, but Chris Dimitrov, when I was living in North Carolina years ago, I worked for a company that sold Dish TV services, so DirecTV and DishNet out of the same office, right? We would just and we would sell them both, right? So whatever, no loyalty, right? But Chris Dimitrov was a manager there, and he had been there for years. And he had basically just abruptly left Hollywood, like out of the blue, canceled all his contracts and just stopped even getting parts. And he could have been a very successful actor. And, back then I didn't understand and didn't know what I know now. But you really, you've got to be, in my opinion, you've got to be willing to do some really bizarre and funky shit in order to sort of prove your allegiance to these snakes, right? And so to a certain degree, all of them witches, right? That's what I always say. And, as much as I like Russell Brand and stuff, hopefully we don't find out, that there's all this damning evidence. I just don't see him. And the same thing with Chris D'Elia, man. It's like, these are guys that I wouldn't expect would have to do this sort of thing. Guys that are, plenty well off as far as money goes, and not to disrespect any of the ladies out there, but a lot of women out there, as long as you got money, they don't care about much else, whether you're a decent person or even about looks or anything. Like, if you got money, in a lot of cases, that's game over. You're already in, as far as a lot of women are concerned, and it goes the other way too. I'm not saying that's exclusive to women, but in this case, we're talking about Chris D'Elia, the stand-up comic, and Russell Brand. These are not guys, and same thing goes with Bill Cosby. Like, what is the motive? And really, Danny Masterson too. Like, these are guys that don't need to do that sort of thing. Like, if they wanted to, surely they could go buy a whole gaggle of prostitutes and have, spend a week with them, and it wouldn't affect their bank account in the slightest, right? So it's just very strange to me that, people of those sort of means would do that. And I know, like, I've known psychopaths too. So for a lot of people, it's a control thing. They get off on hurting people. It's what makes them feel alive, right? I've known murdering psychopaths. I have, for sure. And they are definitely scary people to be around, man. Love them to death, still, but you wouldn't want to meet them in a dark alley if they had a bone to pick with you, right? So, yeah, I don't know, man. So what do y'all think? So that stuff's coming out. And YouTube's in the house. What's up, brother? Or he was earlier. Okay, I'm just now reading Illidan Storm Rage. I didn't even recognize all the stuff that you had wrote, Illidan Storm Rage, because of that Beautiful font. So let's see. No damage, property, no crime. Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. No injured party equals no crime. Right. Yep, agreed. No corpus defecti equals no crime. Absolutely. You have a claim against me? Do you know anybody who does have a claim against me? Let the record show these individuals present here today have no affidavit, liens, criminal charges. Indictments placed upon me, my persons, my property, and my affiliations. If anybody else have anything to say, speak now or take it to the grave. That's what you have to say, right? Yeah. So Rich Spillman says he thinks Danny Masterson did it for sure, more so than Cosby. Yeah, I kind of tend to think so too. But on the other hand, what if he's an FTM trainee? I mean, then what? I'm not saying he is, but I mean, it could be. He's definitely not, absolutely not an FTM trainee. So what if he's that? Then what? You know what I mean? Like, and I know that's sort of a curveball, but I don't know, man. As you really, all the media is just a damn circus, man. You really can't trust anything. Their main job is to keep us in a constant state of confusion and fear, so that they control all the variables of what we react to on a daily basis. And they're very proficient with that sort of mind fuckery or skullduggery. They really are. They've been doing it a long time, and they know exactly what they're doing. Murphy Stark says, the really real question across the board should be, how do we allow this? More of us than them, yet we hide behind the couch under the bed, hoping someone else will take care of it. This is a problem. Yeah, I know, man. I know. Because if we were going to stand up to the absolute injustice that we're up against, then we should have done it 50 years ago, right? When they started putting people in jail for pot. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, that's a plant that grows from the earth and that never hurt anybody, as plants don't, but especially pot, right? I mean, there's arguments to be made against the likes of cocaine and heroin and other things that are highly addictive, right? And not really beneficial in any way, medically or spiritually. But in my opinion, pot is sort of in a league of its own, although it was considered just as addictive and dangerous as those other things for a long time. And it's still, it's still not 100% legal for us to even have pot in many states, right? So, but if we were going to make a stand against tyranny that we have in this country, we should have done it a long time ago with pot. And by the way, the next time you see someone getting arrested for possession of cocaine, then you sort of have a responsibility to step in and save the day, right? I mean, of course, nobody's actually going to do that. But at the same time, which one is the bigger crime? Kidnapping or possessing cocaine in your pocket? I mean, really, which one is the bigger crime? And I'm here to tell you that the only crime is the person kidnapping the other person for having a derivative of a plant in his pocket. You know what I mean? I think the punishment ought to fit the crime. And when you're treating people that possessed marijuana the same or worse as chomos, right? Then we're just up against huge injustice calling itself justice. They call good evil and evil good, right? And to all you good capitalists out there, the for-profit prison industry is a great investment because there's growth every year. Yep. I mean, of course, our tax dollars are the ones paying, $70,000 a year per inmate. That's coming right out of our tax dollars, so we might as well profit from it too, right? Because hell, if the prison system is making loads of money on the backs of our prisoners, who many of them simply possessed the wrong kind of salad and intended to distribute the wrong kind of salad too, then we better lock them in cages like animals and treat them just like murderers and rapists, right? I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Not, right? So, yeah, if the punishment doesn't fit the crime, then that's injustice. If there's a punishment for no crime, then that's tyranny. And it really is up to us, the people. We're the only ones who are going to stand up against tyranny for us. Nobody else is going to do it. And so if we're not willing, and nobody is willing to, and I'm certainly not saying I'm fixing to do anything like this, but nobody's willing to step in and save the day when the authorities overstep their boundaries. And nobody's done it for a long time, and nobody's going to do it as far as I can tell. The only way this goat rope is going to come to an end is when the whole damn thing collapses, really, in my opinion. And it's headed for a collapse, let me tell you. And, while at one part of me is like, sort of dreads what's that's going to look like if I live to see it. Another part of me is like, thank God, finally, right? Because I've been living on the wrong end of a shit stick for a long time, and I'm tired of it, man. Honestly, part of me is like, great, let's get this over with, and let's just go ahead and so how's it going to look? Is it going to be Russia and China invading us from Alaska and Mexico? Something like that? I don't know, man. I would expect something like that. And of course, the shadow government that we have, what they're going to do is take the military underground and fight a protracted war from the depths with all their tunnel systems, while the average citizen is cannon fodder. And that's been the plan for all along, right? It's like part of me sees the whole American, not the American dream, but the American experiment as basically us being set up as sheep to a slaughter, right? Americans will tell you, oh, we've got the most powerful military in the world and this, that, and the other. Sure, we spend a lot more money on military than anybody else. But what does that actually mean? Like the military wastes a lot of money. When you're paying $10,000 for a toilet seat, $1 billion goes pretty quick. You know what I mean? China alone, their armed forces is 100 million strong. 100 million. Okay. The United States armed forces is like about 1 million strong, right? That's it. And that's just China. You've also got Russia and North Korea, who ain't exactly happy with the United States, right? Now, I hate to be like fear-mongering or war-mongering, and like part of me tends to think that a protracted war on U.S. soil will never happen. But I'm here to tell you the writings on the wall from the prophets, like Mystery Babylon is eventually going to fall. And anyone who denies that the United States is Mystery Babylon, then we're just going to agree to disagree on that one, right? But yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of, well, one good thing is I'm not so much worried about nuclear holocaust anymore as I once was growing up. I mean, that's sort of where they want us, is in fear of nuclear holocaust, right? But in the meantime, what we really need to be worried about is that sort of slow boil, right? The whole frog in the boiling water analogy, right? Because what they're doing is they're doing the totalitarian tiptoe, to steal this phrase, by feeding us with fear mongering and fear porn through the mainstream media outlets, while they're taking these little baby steps towards absolute tyranny in order to protect us from the boogeyman overseas with the nuclear bombs, on the other side of planet Earth. You know what I mean? So, I mean, they've definitely got everybody snowed from the ground up. So they've really made an art about controlling the way people react to things that are going on in the in the world, and whether that's real or imagined, it doesn't matter. As long as they convince people that it's real, then it doesn't matter if it's imagined. The same end is fulfilled in terms of the mind control programming, right? The predictive program. So they know what they're doing. Yeah, letting it burn. I mean, it's true, man. Like, to think that there will never be a war on U.S. soil, I think is naive. And I think that the United States has stepped on so many toes around the world. It would be injustice if we don't get, vengeance dealt to us. That would be a grave injustice if the United States doesn't pay for all of the wrongdoing that we collectively have done around the world. I'm sorry to say, but we're the new Indians. I mean, but look, starting with the very Native Americans, what we did to them, going on all the way to after 9/11. So George Bush and his cronies blew up the World Trade Center, which justified a war in Iraq and Afghanistan for 20 years, right? So that's the same shit they've been doing ever since. So Vietnam War had the Gulf of Tonkin incident. World War II had the Pearl Harbor incident. World War I had the Maine and Spain incident, right? They've only got one playbook, and it is false dichotomy. It is problem, reaction, solution. It is the Hegelian dialectic. That's all. That's really the only trick that they've got. And the reason that they use it so much is because it works, right? Why would you change up your playbook if you can just keep running that motherfucker right down the middle every time and it works every time? As long as they keep over 90% of people absolutely snowed, then it doesn't matter. Appreciate you, John Black. Yeah, I've been playing monkey tag with this hotel all week. I was supposed to pay them $500 on Tuesday, and I only had 200, so I gave him 200 and a promise to pay him. And then some money I was counting on didn't come in, but I did give him another 50. And then I gave him another 100. So I still owe him $150, which I've been putting off, and it's due again on Tuesday. So if I don't come up with another $150, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be kicked out of this motherfucker tomorrow, which, at least, part of me is like, thank God to just get it over with. I'm so tired of dreading what's going to happen. Like, living like that, living in a constant state of stress and not knowing where you're going to be is almost worse than just saying fuck it and sleeping in the car with the dog and the wife, right? So, KXRSEDXOXO says, isn't anyone concerned about the fact that we will be reset again if everyone wakes up? Honestly, I don't worry about much. I really don't. Because, all right. So I've had a few near-death experiences starting when I was very young. So like the first time I was dead for a couple minutes and I went to the other side and everything. And so ever since then, I'm not afraid of death at all. I've had other situations since then. Most recently when I was hit by a car on my motorcycle, and it was so bad I broke the car's windshield with my face, and it ripped the arm right off of my leather jacket. And I was fine from that, but I was also knocked out for a while, and it was a similar thing where you have not so much the crossing over part, but the reevaluation of your life part, because it is traumatic and PTSD. And it was that accident that led me towards ultimately flat Earth. So, sometimes it takes getting hit by a car to, to make the good changes, right? Perhaps you could buy an inverter for the car. Inverter. What do you mean, inverter? Are we talking about like a Winnipeg carburetor and run that motherfucker on water? I'd love to know how to do it. Hey, let me cut this air conditioner on real quick. I'm getting hot over here. Bear with me. Yeah.
You got to grab it right now. I gotta get up.
Not right this minute, but yeah, here in a minute. But anyway, to your question, I'm not sure how to say your name, Exercid, XOXO, KXRcid. Yeah, I don't worry about much, man, because honestly, when we die, it's not that bad. So when I was real young, my brother and I got dropped off at my grandparents' house to spend the weekend over there. And in fact, it was the first time we had ever went to go spend the weekend with my grandparents, first time ever. And so I was real excited about it. And on the first night that we were there, we ate dinner and then we went to have dessert, sitting around watching the TV. And I was like sitting in the floor eating strawberry ice cream. And the bite of ice cream I had a whole strawberry in it. And when I was eating it, sucking on the strawberry, something on TV was funny. I don't remember what it was, but I laughed. And when I laughed, I sucked the strawberry right down my windpipe. And like, it was so scary because I couldn't breathe and I couldn't get it up, and it started to freak me out. And I'm like standing up and I couldn't talk and I couldn't breathe and I couldn't scream, couldn't do nothing. So like, I went over to the light switch and turned the light on, and I'm like this to my grandparents, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, but they could tell like this actually is the international sign for, hey, I'm choking. And so the pressure started building up, and it was like my ears were ringing like a kettle, and I'm sure like my face was turning blue and stuff. And then just like that, I was basically in, it was still me, but I was in like, kind of a way to describe it is like the loading dock for the Matrix movies, but it wasn't all white. And Lawrence Fishburne wasn't there either, but it was more like cloudy gray. And it was like, I didn't have a body, but I was still conscious and there was no pain. And it wasn't strange that I didn't have a body. Like, it was a perfectly natural thing. And there was no time there. Like, I couldn't tell you, like, while I was there, it seemed like a long time, but really I was only out for a couple minutes. And the gray, cloudy sort of loading docking area, like beyond the walls of the gray, that I was sort of like sandboxed in for whatever reason, I guess because I was so young and I was only dead for a little time. Like, I wasn't granted access beyond just this little sandbox area. But beyond those walls of gray smoke, I could hear things that sounded like a bunch of choir singing in the distance. And I could hear it plain as day. And for however long I was there, it was amazing. Like, it was great. And I distinctly remember the contrast between that fear and pain, which is life, and that instant release of all of that negative stuff, which is the permanent realm, the spirit realm. And so the next thing, bam, I'm back in my body, and my ribs are broke, and like I'm hurting all over, and my grandfather's like smacking me in the face, and the ambulance just got there. So I don't know how long it was, couple minutes, But I remember today, so like this was decades ago and I was a little kid. I'd probably 5 or 6 or something like that, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. So to answer that question, man, no, I'm not afraid of any sort of reset. No, not at all, because I mean, whatever's meant to happen is going to happen. Like if it's meant to be, this is why like people ask me all the time, like, well, how can you possibly smoke cigarettes when you know you're going to die from cancer from it? And you know, my answer to that is, people die every day driving to work. You know, people die every day who never smoked a cigarette in their life and never drank a beer or anything, right? There's nothing that you can do that's going to prevent your death. So things like resets and smoking cigarettes doesn't really scare me, that, you know, as much as it does some people, I guess, because, you know, again, you can never touch a cigarette in your life and still die of lung cancer. I mean, it happens all the time. Whereas you can smoke a pack a day for your whole life and maybe you die in a car accident in a year. You know what I mean? Like, there's no guarantees either way. But as for a reset, no, I mean, like, I think the only chance that we have as a human race is people waking up to the truth. If the world doesn't wake up to the truth, then we don't stand a chance as a society in the future. You might as well pack it up right now. Now, if the powers that be respond with a global reset, as you know, so many people say, well, first of all, there's nothing we can do to stop it if they have the power to do that and if they choose to pull that trigger. But at the same time, I'm a firm believer that the Most High Creator can do what He wants with this place anymore, right? Let's see the chat. It's hard to read from on my phone. Let's see. Oh, hey, Tony Drake. What's up, brother? Been a long time, man. Okay, John Black says, it says this network is not available when he tries to send message if he talks about certain things. Yeah. It's about the journey, not the destination. Yeah, indeed. Cole Spiracy says, the world is such a shit show. I think we need a frickin' rest. It's very sad. Trouble is, it's just rinse and repeat. Yeah. Murphy Stark says, yeah, if you start batting a good average and getting too close to a truth or pointing something out they don't like, it just disappears. I've had the whole videos go missing in the last month. Yeah, agreed. I mean, they're definitely censoring us and making sure that if you make too much sense and rock the boat with the status quo too much, they're just not going to allow your word to get out very much, for real. So hopefully we can get that to change one day. I think YouTube is opening itself up to litigation by taking on the role of an active, like an active author or an active disseminator of information, a publisher of information, if you will. Because as YouTube, the sort of third-party platform that doesn't have any dog in the fight of the content that's there, it is merely a platform for creators to post their content. They avoid certain legalities. On the other hand, when they start censoring that content and basically telling people what they can and can't say on their platform, now they've taken on more of an editorial role, and there are different legalities that they need to abide by. So, for example, we already know that they are censoring flat earthers, right? And so if they're censoring me because of a belief and there's money involved, like which there is with Google AdSense, if they treat me differently than anyone else on that platform because of my race, color, or creed, my beliefs, that's a civil rights violation. And, you know, frankly, I think that we have grounds to sue the shit out of YouTube and Google. But unfortunately, you know, even class action lawsuits don't really happen unless the right sort of people are involved in it, right? Basically, I guess what I'm saying is the illusion that the little person of America has any sort of sway or power over the corporate fascist entities is just an illusion and a delusion. You know, and I think that's a lot of the reason why some people join fraternal orders like Freemasonry and such, because, you know, this world is kind of a scary place if you're by yourself and you don't sort of join up with the beast, right? But at the same time, if you do join up with that beast and then you decide to like turn your back on the beast or expose the beast for what it is, well, then they've got dirt on you and they have the capability to spin dirt on you because they know you. And so I think something like that's entirely possible in like the case of Russell Brand. And we'll see what that turns out to be tomorrow. I am definitely going to be watching that one closely. What's up, Dank? Maui proves how far they'll go. Yeah, I mean, they've been doing those sort of directed energy attacks for a long time. I mean, I know it was Northern Cali a while back. My friend Daryl got lost his ass on that. He had all his crops were destroyed in those fires in Northern Cali, and it set him back for years. So prayers up for Daryl out there in Cali. Class action lawsuit. Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be what it looks like eventually. I would be a part of it for sure. So any flat earthen lawyers out there, I'd love to hear from you. YouTube doesn't have a choice. They have to do what they're told. Well, no, I mean, YouTube is proactively, even one of the chief officers at YouTube said that they were in a press conference that they were proactively filtering down flat earth content and promoting globe earth and anti-flat earth content. I mean, and obviously they're doing that. We didn't need them to go off and say that in public, but it certainly doesn't hurt our case when even YouTube admits to what they're doing. And the fact that they are discriminating against me because of my beliefs and treating me differently in terms of monetary opportunity that they offer on their platform to everyone equally, that's a lawsuit, man. I'm sorry to say that's a fucking lawsuit. And, you know, Google, YouTube has basically more money than God. And so I think it would be something that they would definitely prefer to settle out of court than to go to the links of class action litigation. Although they could keep something like that buried in court for decades. And even if they had to pay $10 billion, it really wouldn't affect Google, YouTube that much, I don't think. 10 billion? I don't think so. And when has a class action lawsuit ever been 10 billion? You know what I mean? So it would be like suing NASA for $1 billion. Well, I guess that means they don't get a coffee pool next year if we take $1 billion from NASA, right? Good luck with that. Yeah, I know. I'm not on a pipe dream. I'm just saying, man. I think it would be a worthwhile action, but I'm not really one to get involved in legal actions anyways, but there you have it. All right, fellas. Well, it is now 4:15. I guess I'm sort of rambling at this point, but I hope y'all enjoyed the stream, man. Got some flat earth content coming on the way. And Might do some more Nag Hammadi readings here in a little while. I don't know. I'll see how much time permitting. But if you would like to help me keep my hotel, links below for PayPal, Patreon, Venmo, all that. Love you guys very much. As always, spread the word, spread the world, and peace out, y'all. Bye.